Imagine trying to learn a new language but only using a dictionary or a book on grammar. No conversations, no listening, just theory. That sounds crazy, right? And yet that's what a lot of musicians do when they're trying to learn jazz. They study the scales, they'll study chords, they'll even study chord scale relationships. They'll know the modes, and they'll say it's a 2-5-1, so I'm going to play Dorian, and then Mixolydian, and then Ionian. So they know all these things, and yet they're not fluent in the language of jazz. In this video, I want to show you how learning jazz is the same as learning a new language. And I want to show you how you can use this idea to change the way you practice, listen, and improvise. So let's get into it. Think about a baby. They listen for months and months before even saying a word. They're soaking in the rhythm, the tone, inflection, and emotion long before trying to speak. It's exactly the same in jazz. What we need to do is to listen before we even touch the instrument. We need to listen to music, but to listen deeply to the very fine details. What I strongly recommend is to listen to musicians whose playing is not too advanced for your ears, so that you can really hear what they're doing. There are certain people like Horace Silver, people like Sonny Clark, people like Oscar Peterson, and maybe even some of the older guys like Teddy Wilson. There are guys whose melodies are so singable. Red Garland is another good one. So I would recommend, as a beginner pianist, if you play another instrument, you can just find someone that's probably easy to copy on your instrument. You know, if you're into trumpet, maybe Miles Davis or Chet Baker or someone like that. If you start off with dizzy, you might get dizzy. You know, so you want to find something that's quite accessible, that you can really listen to and analyze this detail before you even touch your instrument. Preferably something that you can sing. When you've heard a lot of jazz, your brain will start to think in jazz, just like how the baby's brain starts to think in the language that it hears all the time. Here's something that we forget. Babies repeat the same word over and over and over. I can't even count the number of times my children said the word mama, 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 mama. They're still saying it today. And yet, isn't it interesting that in jazz, we don't necessarily believe in repeating things, because we talk about improvising. Sometimes we just assume that you have to be creating something completely new. However, when you're learning, the best way to learn is to take something and then repeat that thing over and over and over until it becomes part of your daily speech, until it becomes part of your language. So let's say you've learned something like and I'm playing that over a C chord. So basically that's something I can play over any major chord. You know, maybe I'm going to play a dominant 7. Okay, so suppose I'm playing a blues, right? You see, I'm even starting to do things with that, and by repeating that idea, it actually gives my improvisation a sense of storytelling, because the ears like repetition, actually. So you know who's really good at repeating their ideas when they play them is Horace Silver. So I would really encourage you to check out some of his playing and his records and see how he uses repetition to tell stories in his improvisations. Really fantastic stuff. So just like babies repeat, so should we in the process of learning the language of jazz. Before babies form their own sentences, they imitate. And they don't just imitate the word, they imitate the rhythm, the expression, the tone, sometimes even physically what the adult is doing when they're saying this particular word. You know, like how I'm using my hands a lot. I've probably seen that somewhere. So just like babies imitate, so should we when we're learning the language of jazz. So you want to listen to someone who you really admire and someone who's imitatable at the level that you're at, and then you want to copy what they're doing, but as precisely as possible. So copy their tone, their touch. You know, so when I say touch, I'm using an electric keyboard here, so sometimes it's difficult to hear that, but do they play maybe with flat fingers and bring out their tone? I hope you can hear the melody at the top. Okay, so I'm playing that with very melodic touch, and I think mostly with flat fingers, which is generally how I play most of the time, actually. But maybe your pianist touch is more percussive, maybe like that's a Thelonious Monk kind of touch, you know. So maybe you're playing your maybe let me play a blues again. You know, so that's a very different touch, or maybe it's a very light but bright touch. Maybe you're playing with curved fingers and playing from the tip of your fingers. You know, so you know, so that's probably more Oscar Peterson-ish. You know, with a nice bright touch. Anyway, whoever you admire, try and copy their touch. If their videos are available, maybe try and see even the shape of the hand, which part of the finger they're using, and then try and see if you can get the same sound from their playing. Sometimes it's probably a person's rhythm. So one thing that struck me one time was watching some black and white videos on YouTube of Bud Powell playing, and what struck me is how he hardly ever looks at the keys. But when I look at his mouth, he's singing these things. He's vocalizing these things. They don't sound melodic, but they sound very rhythmic. So that got me to the conclusion that, hang on, Bud Powell is probably thinking about rhythm and not necessarily about the notes he's playing, you know. So he might just ba 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 do ba ba do ba da ba dee da, and he'll play that. You know, I had to look at my keys just to get my geography right, but you know, so thinking about rhythm, but not necessarily the notes that I'm playing. So that's something that I copied from just visually seeing Bud Powell playing. So imitate whatever you can. Imitate the rhythm, imitate the notes, imitate the touch. If you want to imitate the pitch, that's also fine. Okay. But just like babies learn by imitating, so should we. And you'll find you'll get better faster. When a child learns the word food, for instance, they don't learn it from the dictionary. They've seen food, they've smelled food, they've tasted food, so that's how they know that that's food. And they'll cry until they get the food that they want. So context is really everything. So whenever they're hungry, they know food. I've noticed babies often have original words that they make up for whatever food, For some people, some babies might say gaga. Gaga might, who knows what that means? That could be milk because it goes gaga gaga gaga, or whatever, But they'll use that word not from the dictionary, just from real experience to know that this is what I say when I need that. So for jazz musicians, context is also everything. So notes are not really anything until you put them in a certain context. So if you have a line played over, let's say, for instance, a 2-5-1. I remember once hearing Wynton Kelly play something like, that's actually a cool line there. So he plays that over a 2-5-1 progression. That's the context in which he plays. Okay, so he won't just play that over a major chord, for instance, like that's like you saying gaga when actually what you need is the toilet, or a change of diaper. So you want to make sure that whatever you learn, you understand its complete context, So if I know that, that means I might be playing my song like, now I'm ready to apply my language. You see, there I tried to apply it in a slightly different context. It kind of worked and it kind of didn't, because that was a 2-5-1 in a minor key. I was just experimenting there. But basically, you want to apply that little piece of language to as many 2-5-1 contexts as possible. So you might be playing, maybe not autumn leaves. Let me pick something else, like fly me to the moon. Or you might be playing all the things you are. Right, so might be playing Indiana. Then here it comes. And so forth. Okay, so you take a phrase or a piece of language, piece of vocabulary, you understand its context, like, okay, this is played over a 2-5-1. Therefore, anytime I play a piece and it's got a 2-5-1 in it, I can say that. Okay, so that's how you begin to speak the language and to say appropriate things at the right time. By the way, speaking of context, I've got a PDF that I'm going to put in the description that gives you 10 steps to becoming a better jazz musician. And in addition to that, you've also got quite a number of jazz language. So these are licks, which I actually recommend you listen to. So they are written for those of you that can read music. If not, I would advise that you listen to recordings of the people who played those licks, and really hear the context in which they're played. Again, imitate them as closely as you can, the touch, the phrasing, everything. And then you can start applying those in your own playing, okay? Or at least use those as a starting point so that you can now learn your own 251 phrases from whoever you like, okay? But basically the bottom line is, in that PDF are more phrases and the context in which you can use those phrases, and you can start to use those to learn to speak the language of jazz. Okay, so please download that in the description. One thing that babies really understand is emotion, and how language is really about communicating and expressing your thoughts. So if they're unhappy about something, well, they cry, okay? If they find you funny, they're going to laugh, right? If they're confused, they're just going to look at you with a confused face. So babies understand that language is not about perfection. It's really about you just putting across your ideas, but also not neglecting the emotional side of language and expressing oneself. So in jazz, especially when you're learning, it's also very important for you to never forget the importance of emotion and expression. It's not really about playing perfectly. A lot of I remember once, I mean, this is not a jazz musician, but he's a fantastic improviser, Jimi Hendrix, saying in one interview that he makes so many mistakes. I'm like, what mistakes are you talking about? So I guess those are unintentional notes or wrong notes, but he plays them anyway. But he connects with us because we love the way he expresses himself on his guitar when he's playing rock. And I believe that jazz musicians are the same, so it's not really about playing perfectly, not playing as accurately as possible, but expressing your ideas. And I think Monk is another good one, who there are a lot of things there that he plays which are not necessarily clean, I don't know how much of it. I think a lot of it is actually intentional, but for whatever reasons, whether they were technical or whatever, there's some notes that sometimes to the ear sound wrong, but my goodness, boy, do we love those wrong sounds. We're actually busy trying to figure out how to play those wrong notes, and I think he actually did a lot of that on purpose, actually. So you're playing a seventh chord, you add this note which sounds really wrong, as far as music theory is concerned, because your seventh chord is supposed to have a 5, not a flat 5. But now we like that, and when he's improvising, he might even go. Really cool sound, right? So I'm actually going to do a video at some point showing how there is no such thing as a wrong note, okay? So perfection, yes, let's strive to get better at our playing, but playing perfectly is never the goal. If we make a mistake, it's really about how we resolve that mistake. I could be playing a C chord, and theory tells us that in the key of C, we have to play these white notes, but in reality, that wrong note there, that C sharp, if I just resolve it, those are all wrong notes. Wrong notes in the key of C. I'm resolving all the. So you can basically turn any mistake into a correct thing. It's not about mistakes or perfection. It's all about connection, and most importantly, emotion, and expressing your thoughts and ideas. Babies learn in an environment that's very supportive. So if your child says their first word, no matter how correct or wrong that word sounds, I mean, we're never like, one word, is that all you've got? We get very excited. We're hoping they can say it again. We're looking for our phone so that we can video them saying it the second time. So it's unfortunate that sometimes in the world of learning jazz, we are sometimes we find ourselves in a judgmental environment. So people will judge how you play. Maybe you're judging how I play now. Maybe you're judging how I speak. And sometimes that's not necessarily healthy for one getting better. If you want to really get better at jazz, the one thing that I found really helps is you being in a supportive environment. So if there are people that don't necessarily like your playing, you know what? On the other side of the world, you will find people that like your playing, even if it's one person. Rather, work with that one person, and you'll find yourself improve. Because encouragement is the one thing that we all need every now and then. Sometimes criticism's good, and there's certain things to learn from there. But overall, the people that love you are usually your people. Those are the people who you really need to pour your energy into, and not necessarily the ones that don't. Those that don't, they can always just click the skip button, so to speak, and go to the musicians that they like. So if you find yourself in a supportive environment, that's really going to help you learn this language faster. Sometimes it's not even about other people. Sometimes it's ourselves, especially adults. So babies don't really judge themselves, because we're just here to learn how to speak this language, and people are celebrating our success anyway, even the smallest success. So, oh good, I'm going to learn the next word now, make them even more excited. In jazz, when we're learning, sometimes we're very hard on ourselves. We're thinking about the mistake that we're making. We are really worried about whether our technique is as good as Art Tatum. Will we ever come up with inventive things like John Coltrane or Charlie Parker? And those are good goals to have, but overall, you want to encourage yourself and celebrate yourself. So one useful thing I've found is recording myself. So if you're working on a topic, record yourself from day one and just listen back to it, without criticism or anything. Just listen. How do I play? Okay, that's cool. And then record yourself on day 2. By the time you get to day 30, maybe listen to day 30 and then listen to day 1 and ask yourself, on this topic, has anything actually changed? Or if you find a supportive friend, a like-minded friend, just ask them what they think about this recording versus this recording of you playing. You could be playing the same song, and you might be surprised what they say. So it's very important to be in a supportive environment where people are rooting for you and people just want you to succeed. And most importantly, you should be wanting you to succeed. You support yourself. You're doing well. This is already a very challenging type of music. So the fact that you are even attempting it, well done. Okay, so just keep going. Children get better at speaking by having conversations with other people. And likewise, jazz musicians get better at speaking the language of jazz by playing with other people. So when you're playing with other people, it's very important that you listen to what the other musician plays, and then you want to try and respond to that. Some of my favorite musicians do this extremely well. People like Herbie Hancock are very good at responding to other people. Chick Corea, very good at responding to what the person plays. I remember listening to a Miles Davis recording, and I think they're probably playing, it's a blues, but at some point Miles will play Ba-be-da, and then Red Garland plays exactly the same chords, and I just thought that was really cool. It's like a moment. It just gets you shivers down your spine. It's beautiful, and it gives the sense that these guys are having a conversation, and instead of people having monologues, children don't really have monologues. Well, maybe they do, but that's not how they get better. So monologues, yes, are good for the stage or for the camera, but if you want to get better at having conversations, you have to develop the skill or the ability to listen and then to respond to someone. So you basically have to keep your ears very open and listen to what the soloist is doing. Maybe it's a singer, maybe it's a vocalist. Sometimes you respond to what you're doing. So, in fact, let me try a little bit of that. I'll play something over C minor. Alright, I just said bop dee dee. Okay, let me develop that. So I'm responding to what I'm doing, right? Let me add a few more chords. Maybe let me play this like a minor blues or something. Okay, so what I'm doing there is I am really listening to what I've just done and then I'm responding to it. So it's probably difficult to tell because I'm doing it at around about the same time, but if you listen to that over and over, you'll realize how these ideas are actually connected to each other. So you simply listen, respond. Those are the best conversations to have, and that is one of the best ways to get good at speaking, because now you can take some things from the various people that you're playing with, and that can only make you better. If you don't have real musicians like live within your area to play with, well, responding to things on recordings is also a very good idea. So, I mean, what's more beautiful than responding to Charlie Parker, for instance, or to Bud Powell? Okay, Bud Powell might be very fast, but there's lots of inspiration to be got from listening to those guys and responding to them. Miles Davis could be playing his solo and you can just accompany him. Coltrane could be playing things and you can just accompany John Coltrane. Okay, so many opportunities to have conversations, even if you don't have them face to face. We can always use recordings. Babies mispronounce words for years and years, and no one ever corrects them. No one ever gets annoyed with them for mispronouncing words. And just like they mispronounce words, sometimes you are also going to mispronounce notes that you're trying to play on your instrument. But that shouldn't stop you from playing, because these mispronunciations are sometimes the things that will tell you exactly what you need to work on. Sometimes you'll mispronounce something and then you actually love what you've just stumbled upon. So if you keep your ears open, you keep your heart open, who knows what you could come up with. There are some great things that have actually come from this idea of mispronouncing things. Plus, if you consider the fact that in jazz your ultimate goal is, well, just to express your ideas in your own way, well, if you mispronounce something, no one out there knows what you wanted to say, so it's okay. If you can just quickly recover from it, that's the most important thing. I've heard that often if you play a wrong note, you're just a semitone away or a half step away from the right note. Okay, so that means if I'm playing a C minor and if I play, I can make that note right by playing that. Actually, that was quite beautiful, this note. In fact, let me try and play it while playing C minor. Oh, that did not sound bad at all to me. So, what if I said? Now it sounds like that's actually intentional. What if I said? So almost any note could work. Let me see what if I play C minor with an E natural in it. That doesn't sound bad at all, you know. So if the things that you play after are fine, then there are no mispronunciations, no wrong notes. Okay, just like I said earlier. So feel free to do that, and that's how you grow. So if you want to get better at jazz, stop treating it like a subject. Rather treat it like a language. So immerse yourself in that language. Imitate, repeat, be in a positive environment, and you'll find yourself in no time speaking and understanding the language of jazz. Have conversations with other jazz musicians, musical ones, you know, not just verbal ones. So you can try all these things out. A nice place to have these conversations as actually is in my community on my website, where you've got like-minded musicians. Everyone's learning, including myself. So we get to share things there and to just spread love and positivity and learn this difficult music, knowing that the goal is just for you to express your ideas. You don't have to say it in any specific way. So as long as you are speaking it and we understand what you're saying, that's really all that counts, because it's a language, right? So again, reminder that I've got the free PDF, which is going to guide you to learning some easy jazz language to start. Probably spot some of these things from your favorite jazz musicians like Barry Harris or Charlie Parker or Red Garland or Wynton Kelly, Oscar Peterson. There's bits of language from all these real amazing musicians. So please do check that out in the description. If you're interested in lessons or my 90-day program of coaching, also feel free to get in touch with me. I'm going to put my details in the description. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do so. That will really help. I appreciate your support. And if you've got any comments or questions or any thoughts on this idea of jazz as a language, please feel free to leave that in the comment section. And I hope to see you in the next video.